Welcome to the Thriving Mayor Show, the weekly broadcast featuring former and current mayors who are thriving, sharing their story, insight, wisdom, and viewpoint. Join us and comment on social media as we meet another of the superheroes we elect to lead the rejuvenation of our towns and cities and who serve us all. Visit www.thrivingmayor.com to learn more. Here we go. Hello, everyone. It's Michael Hubicki, the host of the Thriving Mayor Show. It's April 14th, 2021, and I'm super happy and honored today to have the Mayor of Victoria, BC, Lisa Helps, as our special guest. Hello, Lisa. How are you today?
I'm good. Nice to see you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Great to see you, too. Just so everyone's aware, this show is being pre-recorded, so it's not live, although hopefully Lisa will be able to join us on our live broadcast on Wednesday morning. I'd like to quickly read out my honoring of our Aboriginal lands and peoples from where I'm broadcasting from here in the Bay of Quinte. We will begin this episode by honoring the Aboriginal land and the Indigenous peoples who've lived here from the beginning. As settlers, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Long before today, there have been Aboriginal peoples who have been the stewards of this place. In particular, we honor the ancestors of the land, the Anishinaabeg, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, Ojibwe, Chippewa peoples. This territory is covered by the Williams Treaty. Tatalia Michelle Nahani taught me about honoring our shared community with the land and people. I'd just like to read a brief bio on Mayor Helps as well. Mayor Lisa Helps has served as mayor of Victoria since 2014, and before that, she was city councillor from 2011 to 2014. She is relentlessly future-leaning and works hard to ensure that Victoria is prosperous, resilient, welcoming, and ready for challenges and opportunities ahead. Mayor Helps prioritizes collaboration, diversity, and building understanding. She brings together a diverse range of community leaders to work together to advance ambitious programs such as future-focused economic development, climate action, affordable housing, and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. And welcome again to the show, Mayor Helps.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
I was wondering if you'd be so kind as to read your local acknowledgement of territorial lands and peoples.
Sure. Yeah, I wouldn't think of considering beginning the interview without it. I don't have anything I read because one of the pieces of information that I got from the teachers here is speak from your heart and say what you're feeling in the moment. So I'd just like to share with all the viewers that I'm here on Lekwungen territory, and that's a language group. The Lekwungen speaking people are known today as the Songhees and the Esquimalt nations, and the city of Victoria basically occupies their homelands. And we've been working for many years now on a path of reconciliation to learn and to share and to understand how do we move forward collectively as a people and as settlers who have literally set up in their living room and never left. And these are difficult conversations, they're painful conversations, and they're important conversations, but there's not a day that goes by that I'm not grateful to the nations and their ancestors as stewards of these lands, and honored and humbled to be part of the reconciliation journey.
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful tribute and a great honor as well. In doing the research for our episode, Lisa, I went back and I just quickly looked at your last 3 blogs on your website, and I need to just let everybody know this is not enough time to get into the content of those last 3, but a couple in particular that I think would be really interesting and relevant to talk about, especially as this April is World Landscape Architecture Month. And last week we had the past president of the Canadian Society of Landscape Architects, Glenn O'Connor, on the show, and we talked about how our cities and towns are so important for our mental health and physical health and obviously ecology and climate adaptation and things like that. So I'd like to focus on the areas of your mayorship and how you're seeing Victoria evolve. And we'll play a little bit later in the episode your 2016 video that was kind of highlighting Victoria, and you talked about your vision. I think it was to be the most one of the most creative, entrepreneurial or innovative and happiest small cities in the world.
In the world, that's right.
Amazing. And I've been to Victoria once and love it and would love to go back. And we'll talk a bit about that. And then later in the show, we'll play your 2020 video called Build Back Victoria, which you're showing us some of the things that Victoria was doing in the summer to reintroduce the public, the pedestrians and shoppers and diners and cyclists onto urban streetscapes and public round places. So those were all really fantastic. But before we get into that, we'd just like to learn a little bit about Lisa Help's pre-politician and a little bit about your story. What was that light bulb moment, if there was one, that where you really discovered where your passion lied and that you wanted to go into politics?
Sure. I mean, I'm happy to talk about that. I really, disclaimer, I really don't like politics. I think politics is, one of the things I've learned in my 6 years in this role is that I'm far too pragmatic for politics. But anyways, I was, I've been working in the community, or had been working in the community for years on a number of projects, from building affordable housing to starting a micro lending organization to help people who wanted to start businesses but didn't have access to capital, get their businesses off the ground. And this was back in 2009, kind of pre-Kickstarter and GoFundMe and all those online platforms.
Right.
And one of the things that I saw was that, through taking on some of these leadership roles in the community, bringing people together, fostering a shared vision, it was possible to get things done and change lives. And I was encouraged by a number of people to run for city council in 2012. So I did. And I was elected. And to be honest, it was my time on council that made me think I want to run for mayor. I was only on council for 3 years. And what I witnessed, with all due respect to all the people who were there then, is that the city, and City Hall in particular, was a place where you came if you wanted a no or a maybe, rather than a yes and how can we help you. And so I thought, well, I don't want to be on council again, so I'm going to run for mayor. And if I win, I'll be the mayor. And if I lose, I'll go do something else. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it was really the reason I ran for mayor was because I think the job of City Hall is to help unleash potential. Yeah,
and as we talk about your housing initiative, I think the third bullet point is let's get rid of the red tape. If something's already approved, let's just move it through like it should be.
Yeah.
And I love the analogy of no and maybe, but yes and.
Yeah.
That's a mindset that I think a lot of people now are really starting to engage with and relate to. For so long we've had the no and but and may not here, not in my backyard, but the yes and how can we help? That is amazingly refreshing and wonderful mindset. And take us back to your mayoral campaign. Was it hotly contested? A lot of candidates and.
Yeah, I mean, so I've run and won twice. Both were very challenging elections, but for very different reasons. So when I ran for the first time in 2014, I was running against the sitting mayor, a former Liberal cabinet minister,
wow,
and a former TV anchorman. So it was, and there were 8 candidates, but the 4 of us were kind of the lead candidates or the. So yeah, it was very difficult, and it was interesting actually. I noticed on the campaign trail, at the all candidates debates, everyone was kind of attacking the current mayor, and I was just, got off a little bit, easy. But then someone must have done some polling, and it must have shown that it looked like I could win. And then all of the attacks started to come my way. I mean, by attacks, I mean it's fair game, right? We're in a debate, and there, So yeah, I mean, it was interesting. What I liked about my first campaign, it was a very, very wide net. If you want to look at political affiliations, we had people there from all four main parties: the Conservatives, the NDP, the Greens, and the Liberals. So very wide tent, and wide range of ages too. I think my youngest campaigner door knocker was 12, and then oldest was in their 70s. So
wow.
Yeah, it was the community pulling together to push for change.
And take us to so obviously, like a couple of weeks before the election, you became the magnet for the not attack, but the I guess the counter campaigning, and obviously that's probably a good and a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly.
When you realize, okay, now the magnet's here, the target's right here, you've got them a little bit scared. But then take us to election night, and where were you, and who were you with, and how did that play out, and was it pretty tense? And
yeah, it was. I mean, it was very tense. It was very close. So we were in my campaign headquarters, and the whole campaign team was there. And I mean, there were probably, pre-COVID, right, when you could still gather.
Yeah.
50 or 60 people. I don't remember that, but yeah. And then the numbers started coming in, and we were watching, and it was so close. And then there was this big pause while the mail-in ballots needed to be counted.
Oh yeah. And
I remember Derry McDonnell, who he was one of my older volunteers in his 70s. He ran up with a calculator, and he had done some calculations that even if the mail ballots split in the same way that the rest of the ballots were splitting, I would win. And so, but I had Jane Sturck, who was the former leader of the BC Green Party. She was there, thankfully, and she took me aside, and she's like, "You have to wait till he calls you, like the existing mayor. You have to wait till he calls you and congratulates you before you accept the victory," which I would not have known. And so we watched the mail-in ballots come in, and then the current the then mayor called me and said congratulations, and then we. There was actually a good front page shot on the Times Colonist, our local paper here, in that moment about, it was definitely a victory moment, that's for sure.
Oh, so you were on the phone with him, and that's when they snapped the phone?
No, I had just hung up the phone, and someone in the room had said the mail-in ballots are counted, Lisa's the winner, and we went like, woohoo. But guess how many votes I won by?
478.
89.
No.
89 votes. And the beautiful thing about that is so many people came up to me over the next few weeks. They're like, I was one of the 89.
Yeah.
And what I liked about it being so close is it really shows the importance of democracy and the importance of voting.
Yeah. Exercise your franchise, make your vote, because if you don't, then you're not going to get the person that you want. Yeah. Well,
in 2018, I won by 4,000 votes, so it was quite a larger margin.
But that's still not like huge, is it? It's like, I think out in Victoria, people are very active politically, and
yes and no. Not so in that election, 43.5% of people who could vote did vote. So turnout was still below 50%.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, that's obviously a much clearer mandate than the 89.
Yeah, exactly.
Up to the 4,000. Yeah, that's great. When and it's interesting that the previous mayor had also been I think you said a provincial cabinet minister.
No, the provincial cabinet minister was another one of the candidates.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was just going to tell a story that George Cuff told on one of the episodes, that when one of his friends was a mayor, who every day walked down the main street, he'd get stopped, and he was like the most popular person in town, and he couldn't get down the street without getting stopped and asked a question. Then he became a member of provincial parliament, and then a member of federal parliament, and they forgot about him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the mayor is really top dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. And when you came in 2014, was that mindset that you brought, the yes and how can we help, like obviously that was a vision of yours. Was that part of your campaign, part of your platform, and sharing that vision ahead of time?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, the message of my campaign, one of the messages of my campaign is that City Hall should be a place that helps get things done, that unlocks potential. And, one of the first things that I did after being elected was set up an economic development task force of business leaders that would give me advice and help to create an economic action plan. And we did that in 7 meetings. It was pretty crisp, and it was called Making Victoria, Unleashing Potential.
Oh, yeah.
And by December of the first year of 2015, we had a business hub set up at City Hall. So there was a point of contact if you wanted to start a business, relocate your business, expand your business. And that's gone really well. So that felt like an important thing to do. One of the things we heard a lot on the campaign trail in 2014 was about downtown vacancies. And so that was something to tackle right away. And when I was elected in 2014, the downtown retail vacancy rate was close to 11%. And just before COVID, it was down to under 4%, which is actually getting a bit tight for stores.
Yeah, really.
So that was definitely one of the first things that I worked on.
Yeah. So I think in your 2016 video, you talk a lot about unleashing potential and the vision, and I think this might be a good chance to play the video. And there's also some beautiful scenery of Victoria and people paddling their kayak home after work, and we all want to go.
We're an entrepreneurial city. It's in our DNA, and we are an entrepreneurial region. We are unleashing our potential. We are inventing, we're creating, we're rapid prototyping, and we're exporting our goods, services, and products to the world. We live intensely locally, as you can taste if you're drinking our beer. Many of our folks finish work at kayak o'clock, so you leave the office and you go hop in a kayak. We know that people who are happy are more prosperous, make more money, have better businesses, have happier family relationships, and in a time of crisis, if you're happy, you will be more resilient. Our vision is that the city of Victoria and the region will be one of the most creative, innovative, happiest small cities in the world. That's what we're aiming for. We have big aspirations. We are unleashing our potential. And we hope that all of you visiting and all of you from here will help to unleash our potential and to unleash the capital that will help our local companies to grow. We want you to feel by the end of your time here that this little slice of paradise is your place too.
Wonderful video, Lisa, and obviously, not being from Victoria, I want to move there. I want to work there. I'd like to retire there. And what was the inspiration for that, and how did you see using it as the mayor?
I can't remember if it was 2015 or 2016 or 2016. Anyways, it doesn't matter. 2 years in a row, we hosted what we called a capital mission, and we brought up investors. It was supposed to just be. Oh, yeah, that's right. It must have been 2016. The video was made coming out of that. It was supposed to just be investors from San Francisco because we were kind of having this back and forth with San Francisco. But then word got out that Victoria was hosting this capital mission for investors. And we had people from San Francisco, LA, Calgary, Vancouver, and Toronto. So the video was shot during that first capital mission as a way to tell the story of Victoria and attract other investors to come back for the next year. And when I say investors, I mean specifically investors in technology business and private sector industry. It's about $5 billion a year is high tech.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of great companies here with a lot of good ideas. And we were wanting to attract investors to come and invest in the businesses to help them grow.
Yeah, and those, well, that's fantastic, and it's very clear to me that you got that message across, and not only attracting the businesses, but then the people to work there is the next big challenge. And there's so many cities that that we're seeing this exodus of the bright brain trust, the younger people, the entrepreneurs, and heading out. But to have an amazing culture and urban form, wonderful weather and amazing urban opportunities to go hand in hand with those employment opportunities is really fantastic.
Yeah, it's a pretty good place to live and work. It's expensive though, and that's one of the things we've really got to tackle is having enough housing for everyone who wants to move here.
Yeah, it's I have friends that are building houses here now in Ontario, and I think they're telling me that a 2x4 has gone from $4 to $12.
The cost of lumber is really like that. I mean, that is way beyond my pay grade, but whoever's responsible for things like that, the supply chain, yeah, it's definitely driving up costs.
Yeah, yeah. So that's going to make this affordable housing obviously all that more challenging as
Yeah.
we come out of the pandemic. Right. And then the video that I found that was from last summer is, and I think we'll put the two videos pretty close together before we get into this discussion about some of the current initiatives that you're working on, was called Build Back Victoria. And obviously during the early part of the pandemic, we were starting to quarantine, and there's a lot of social distancing, and we didn't really even realize that the benefit, I think, of open space, our parks and open spaces, because we were still trying to understand what was going on with COVID. But then as we realized that, okay, if we are careful, we do social distance, it's critical that people start to get back outside. And I think that Victoria is probably one of the leading examples of how you did that in a very effective way. And not just for people walking and strolling and cycling, but for businesses. Really, really dynamic.
Yeah, we really went all out. I mean, we saw our beloved local businesses really struggling. And again, it was one of those yes, and how can we help moments. I don't remember if it was staff or council or a combination thereof that said, you know what, we've got to get businesses space to open in public as soon as possible. And our public works staff at the yard, they were hammering out 2x4s, not as expensive as they are now, but and putting together patios at cost for businesses. I mean, it was an all in together, and it was pretty bold. And we did end up closing down one of the main streets downtown, which opening it up, I like to say, rather than vehicles. And it had been discussed for about 30 years. And then all of a sudden there we were in about 2 weeks just doing it. And the thing about Build Back Victoria is there's been such enthusiasm for the program is we're doing it again this year. And
amazing.
Hopefully it'll be here to stay. But yeah, it's pretty inspiring. And it was everyone really leaping in together to figure it out.
Okay, so let's watch that video. It's just a minute and a half, but it gives us a really nice glimpse of some of the awesome projects that you did. Wonderful video, Lisa, and I think you mentioned that the public works staff had built a lot of that the carpentry for those projects.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, our planning staff, I think, had to realize that there were going to be no design guidelines for this kind of stuff. So some businesses just built their own, but some of our smaller coffee shops, they don't have the wherewithal, and so our public works staff put together some pretty rudimentary but pretty quick. Here where used to be 2 parking spots, now there's safe border so that diners can basically sit essentially close to moving traffic, but with that barrier there. So yeah, our staff across the city did a great job.
Yeah, and did you get from the public fairly quickly a positive reaction that this was a thing to do, that they love it? And
Yeah,
really,
really positive. I mean, Victoria is a culture of support for local, and I think our citizens, residents, aka customers of local businesses, I think were very distraught when they saw their local, their favorite local coffee shop or local toy store or local restaurant literally like close their doors in those early days. Like there was, and so as soon as there was an opportunity to support them in any way, Government Street is the street that's usually more touristy than local. And I had a number of people say to me that they had never spent so much time or money on Government Street as they did last summer.
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And hopefully they shared it out through the rest of the community as well.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And I think you might have forgot to mention microbreweries.
And microbreweries. Yeah, I think Victoria has the most microbreweries per capita. I don't know if it's in Canada or in North America, but yeah, our microbrewers are amazing. And I think their sales went up, to help everyone through the pandemic.
It must be the arid climate there, because I heard it never rains.
People hear that a lot. I mean, people sometimes think of the West Coast and think of Vancouver and it rains a lot in Vancouver. But yeah, in Victoria, the weather is pretty darn good. It does rain, obviously, but
so it is a lot different than Vancouver.
It's a lot different than Vancouver. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll skip Vancouver. I'll come to Victoria.
Vancouver's a great city too. We're just different scales.
Yeah. One of your recent blogs, Lisa, was called Community Making Requires Housing of All Sorts. And then you said 3 big ideas. And I was wondering if you could share with us a little bit about what led up to that, the blog, and then when you articulate those 3 big ideas, how much of that is you and you're kind of setting the vision for that, or are you speaking with? Is it kind of a civic or municipal policy that you're already just sort of building upon? And I'm just curious about, your process. How you work through that. It's super awesome. It's a great blog.
Thank you. Yeah, that's it. And maybe when you share the episode, you can share the link to that blog. I also think it's a good blog, not because I wrote it, because I think that these are ideas that cities need to embrace if we're going to really be kind of inclusive, prosperous, and ready for climate change, quite frankly, in the 21st century. So your first question was a really interesting one. Are these just my ideas, or is this city policy, or is it somewhere in between? The honest answer is it is somewhere in between. One of the reasons I wrote this blog is to give our staff who are working on all of these issues some cover when they bring really bold ideas to council, because that's what we've asked them to do. This is kind of laying out the carpet, or the I don't know, not carpet, but the preamble for staff. So
yeah, the framework.
Yeah, well, not even. I mean, just it's basically it's socializing the public to these ideas, so that when staff bring forward a report, for example, on missing middle housing, then people will be like, oh, right, yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I read about that. So the 3 big ideas are, one is, and this is, I think, common sense, and it's what staff are working on right now. So most cities were designed around the automobile and around single family zoning. And there's a whole history of single family zoning that I won't go into. But basically, single family zoning is the most inefficient, unsustainable, unresilient land use that there is in any city. And in Victoria, in Vancouver, and in most cities across the country, fully 70 to 75% of the land base of cities, well, at least in Victoria and Vancouver, I won't speak for other places, but I imagine it's the same, are occupied by this inefficient, unsustainable land use. And it's the Canadian dream, right? Everyone wants a single family home. But I think we need to update the Canadian dream if we want to have sustainable cities. So idea number 1 is to rezone the whole city so that it's just as easy on a single family lot to build a 4-plex, or if there's affordable housing built into it, a 6-plex. And it doesn't mean that neighborhoods are going to be destroyed and this and that, which is often a fear. Design guidelines would make sure that these new buildings fit into existing neighborhoods. So that's idea number 1.
And design guidelines are so powerful. They can be prescriptive, but still allow a lot of creativity and architectural ingenuity and design. So that's a fantastic idea.
So that's one. And again, that's something that staff are working on right now through a missing middle housing program. The second idea is to get rid of parking minimums. And it should shock all of us that when people are building new housing, that every city in North America, except Edmonton, maybe Minneapolis, probably there are a couple of others, says that if you're building this number of housing units, you must also build this number of parking spots. It's just a really poor use of urban land. I think the generalization, again, this isn't for any particular city, but for every car in a city, there are 9 parking spots for that one car that are mandated through zoning, because your house needs a number of spots, and then your grocery store needs a number of spots, and then your barber needs a number of spots, and so on and so forth. And so, yeah, it's one. So that is a complete waste of limited, expensive urban land. Well, and so the thinking, sorry, go ahead.
Well, and I'm just thinking that's now. And when we start to get autonomous vehicles and we could be at an office and call up or even Uber, but we don't need those. We could go down to maybe 1 parking spot per car, and I've never thought of it that way. That's really amazing.
Yeah, it's problematic and shocking, but again, it's like, so that's easy. So if in the development process we just say to home builders or developers, just build us housing because that's what we need, and build however many parking spaces you think are going to be necessary to sell or rent your unit. So we're not talking about having no parking spaces. We're just saying, I'm just saying that cities shouldn't dictate those. And again, that's something our staff are working on. I think they're planning to begin with getting rid of parking minimums as an incentive for rental housing.
Right.
And then the third big idea is outside of my bailiwick, but we've got a great relationship with the provincial government, and I named a couple of ministers in here and asked them to put their heads together on this, and they are, so that's good. So awesome, the third idea is all cities across the country in some form or another have what's called an official community plan, which is basically the land use plan for the next 2 or 3 decades. And it dictates a lot of things. But even still right now, if there's a new building proposed to be built, even if it fits with the official community plan, it's necessary to go through a big public process and public hearing, just to get council to say yes or no. And again, going back to that yes and, the principle here is if it fits with the official community plan, then don't require a whole public process, just get it through to building the housing or the building as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I think you had mentioned in your blog that one project had taken 2.5 years to get through the planning process. And
a lot of them do, and it's not because staff or slow or developers are dragging their feet. I mean, sometimes there's back and forth and there's changes that need to be made, but that one project in particular, there was a lot of it was 2.5 years of public consultation for a project that essentially, one way of seeing it is the public has already approved it when the official community plan was passed in 2012.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Some of our consulting engineers and planners and landscape architects might feel a little bit different about that because it is somewhat their livelihood. But I mean, we have to get going. We have to get development and.
Well, those people would have more jobs rather than less because the throughput would be faster, so they wouldn't have to spend 2.5 years on one project. They could. So I think from the industry point of view, it actually is better rather than a challenge for any of those folks you mentioned. Yeah,
and as the projects drag on, everyone starts to lose a little bit of the energy and excitement on the two. So I think it's just a win-win-win in so many different ways.
Yeah, well, and also as the projects drag on, it's more expensive, right? Like look at the increased cost of 2x4s. The longer we take to get projects through to building phase, the more expensive they get just because of the escalation of costs and the less affordable the housing can be.
Yeah. And the next blog that I had reviewed, Lisa, which I thought was really intriguing as well, was Victoria Council's recent decisions. I think it was the TELUS building might have been one of the impetuses for it, but a glimpse of post-pandemic life in cities. And you again had 3 points that you kind of elaborated on. And if you could share with us about that one is again, I think it's really interesting. And as we're coming now kind of post-pandemic, and hopefully this summer things will be more or less starting to get back to normal.
I'll go through them pretty quickly, but the first is, this notion of work from home, already has its own acronym, WFH, and my, not my feeling. What I'm seeing in Victoria is, and we had another one come through last week, that people will go back to the office. And TELUS, which is our phone company, essentially, are proposing to build $100 million building, state-of-the-art, sustainable office building for 450 people, a new building. And that tells us that they wouldn't be building it if they thought offices in the future. So the other thing we're seeing is a renewed focus on arts, culture, and live events. And of course, we've only been able to see the symphony through Zoom for the past year. And I think that, and again, decisions that council's making and what we're seeing in the arts and culture community is those sectors are really poised to thrive. And then the third, we've already touched on a little bit, but more public spaces for more people. So, and I've actually got a video there from last summer. One of the businesses shut down their entire block for the whole summer and set up tables and had musicians. And again, you could put the link to that blog post when you share out your video. And so those are some of the things. And again, Jennifer Keesmaat, who's a former head planner in the city of Toronto, she was on a panel here and someone asked, like, what are post-pandemic cities going to be like? And she's like, why don't we just build them how we want them rather than speculate what they're going to be like? And this blog post isn't based on some idea. It's based on the decisions we're making right now.
Yeah. And I love your mindset too. Yes. And it's so clear that it's you're putting the environment first, climate first, people first, culture, recreation, well-being, which
Absolutely.
is amazing. Yeah. So Lisa, I know that you have to jump off for another meeting. I'm so super appreciative of you making time in your busy schedule for to be a guest on the Thriving Mayor Show. You're clearly an awesome example of a thriving mayor and in a beautiful community, and making it even more special.
Well, thank you, Michael. Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for doing the Thriving Mayor. It's a great concept.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for joining us, everyone. And we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining the Thriving Mayor Show. Make sure to like and share and tell your friends and colleagues. Mayors are awesome and are the change agents to enhance the quality of living for over 80% of us. Remember what Coach Wooden said, you cannot live a perfect day without doing something for someone who can never repay you. Much love and peace. Until next time.